Hey friends, so I have a great fall recipe of pumpkin chocolate chip cookies, but I do it with a little bit of a twist. So I'm going to show you right here how I make this easy but really, really good recipe. My kids love it. They want me to make it for their friends, and it's been a popular one for quite some time. So follow along and I'll show you how easy and really tasty they can be. Okay, so here's how we start. Here's a list of all the ingredients. I like to get everything laid out before you begin mixing, just so we know we have everything. One thing that I do to this recipe, because I live in a higher altitude, is that instead of 2 eggs, I actually put 3 in my mix. So start out with your shortening, cream in the sugars, add the eggs. I'm going to show you all, so follow along, and here we go. So almost always when you bake, you want to preheat your oven. So with my oven, I know that this setting, this convection oven setting is going to work better for me. You'll get to know your oven and see which setting is best. But for me, the convection oven setting is best. And so I set it to 325, let it preheat. So when you put your dough in, it is all the right temperature. And then I start out with my KitchenAid. I start with the shortening. You can see it up there in the top. It's this is a really cool device from Pampered Chef. It makes measuring sticky things like shortening or honey, things like that that are kind of sticky, or peanut butter, makes it really easy to measure it accurately. And so this calls for a cup of shortening, which is fine. It makes a ton of cookies, so it's spread out over a large batch. But I like to put the shortening in, then I cream in the white sugar. You can see is already measured out. Once that's creamed in, then I add the eggs. And then after I add the eggs, I add the pumpkin. So like I was describing, first I add the shortening and then I cream in the sugars. Then I add the eggs. You can see here how it changes colors. And just a reminder, the recipe calls for 2 eggs, but because I live at a higher altitude, I like adding 3. If you're maybe at sea level, maybe you'd want to consider doing 2 eggs, but 3 is what I do living here in the mountains of Utah. So anyway, there's that disclosure. And then while that's mixing, I like to take breaks from time to time, use a scraper, scrape down the sides so that there's no clumps of anything that hasn't been mixed in. And then I add in the pumpkin. You can see in the third picture, the pumpkin is added in. While that's all mixing in the KitchenAid, I add all of the dry ingredients. So this recipe calls for flour, baking soda, baking powder, salt, and cinnamon. So you add all of those things together in a dry bowl. You can see it's separate in this bowl. I actually picked up this metal bowl at IKEA. It's one of my favorite baking tools. It's so handy. Anyway, so I mix those dry ingredients together, and then I spoon in the dry ingredients slowly into the liquid mixture, and then it makes a really nice dough. It's very simple. So before you add in the chips, you want to make sure and scrape down the sides really well. Make sure there's no solid clumps of pumpkin, any clumps of any powdery things like flour. You want to make sure everything's really, really well incorporated. It should be very silky smooth, very not dry and cakey, but very smooth and very, very pretty. And then in the next picture, you can see this is my secret to these cookies being so extra awesome. So I add a package of milk chocolate chips because that's what my kids prefer. I add a package of white chocolate chips because I think it looks cool. And then I add butterscotch chips, which is kind of, I think, is the secret ingredient to making them really stand out and be extra tasty. It's kind of this very sweet, but just very delicious mix with the pumpkin. So that's my little secret tip for making extra awesome pumpkin chocolate chip cookies are the 3 different kinds of chips. I think it makes it extra special. Okay, so here we are at the finish line. A pro tip when you're baking cookies is to use a scooper. That will ensure that each scoop of dough is uniform, making the baking surface time the same for all of the cookies. So that will help you have more success when you're baking. Plus, another thing that I love to do is use a silicone mat, like you see right here. I've used this one quite a bit. You can tell it's got a lot of love, but it's still working great. And I have really, really loved it. So I hope you will enjoy this recipe. If you like this kind of content about lifestyle and how to make your life at home a little bit more fun and more tasty, follow along for more. And don't worry, I'll be back with more tennis content as well, because tennis life is all about having fun, living well, and enjoying the people that share your life with you. So come back for more, and thanks for being here. Love all, love everyone. Bye.